Hey folks, this is Dirk Hooper, and I'm going to do something I've never done before. I've got a camera on me, and then I also have the microphone going, and I've got a tablet that I'm going to be doing some inking on, and you can see that I have this piece of artwork here that is that I'm going to be doing inking on. To explain what this is, and by the way, you can leave some comments or something if you're watching this live. I am broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch all at the same time. So if you have some questions about what I'm doing or whatever, you want to say that what I'm doing sucks, then you're welcome to put a comment in there and tell me what you think. So what this is, for those who don't know, and most people wouldn't, this is a page of a comic that is 8 pages. It was originally written in the Marvel method by Matt Price. If you don't know Matt Price, he's a journalist who has worked for the Oklahoma newspaper for over 20 years and has also written comics which have been published and a couple of movies which have been produced, which is pretty cool. He has a character called The Grave, which will appear in this story. In addition to that, this is a crossover story with a character of my friend and fellow Ranking Studios member, Robert Henry, and that character's name is Bad Candy. Bad Candy is kind of like a horror version of Groot. So this character, The Grave, is going to meet, in a manner of speaking, this character called Bad Candy in this story. So this was done written in what's called the Marvel method, which means it's just basically a story that was put out in 2 or 3 pages. It wasn't like written like a script, like a full script where you say, here's all of the things that happen in each panel. That's like the way that Alan Moore scripts, and most people now script that way. This was written, where you basically get the story. So the layout for the story falls to the artist. And a lot of the action and some of the stuff that's going on, also, you have to figure out what panels go on each page and that sort of thing. And again, you can leave comments for me, and I will check it every so often. So in any case, this the layout in this case was done by also fellow member of Ranking Studios, Shawn Wilson. And basically what a layout is like thumbnails. So he does like very small sketches of the panels and gives an idea of what's going on in each of these panels and kind of determines whether it's a close-up or it's far away or what the action is or maybe some effects, and basically determines the flow of the piece. So that was done by Shawn Wilson. What you're looking at now, which is right below me, is a page that has been penciled by Scott Prime. So this page, if you're not, you can look and see what it looks like. Now, this is digital pencils. This wasn't literally penciled on a page. This was penciled in. I believe he was using Clip Studio Paint Pro, which is the same thing that I'm going to be using to ink this piece. But you can take a look at it. You can see how he has determined the structure of the stuff and the detail and the way the characters look and all that sort of thing. That is what Scott has done. And so finally we get to my role, what I'm doing right now, which is, what I'm doing right now is explaining what I'm doing. But what I will be doing in a moment is inking a couple of panels of this piece. And what that does is just take the kind of rough nature of the pencils and cleans it up and makes it ready to be printed. There's another couple of rounds after this, including doing the full script on the thing, which will go back to Matt, and then putting the word balloons in, which I don't know who's going to do that. And if this was a color comic, which it's not, you would put some color in and then you would have a full comic. This is the way that comic books have been done for 50 years or something. And even though that it's now done digitally, it's still very much done this way. So What I want to do is show you, this is the page. You can see below me. It's a full page. It's the second page of an 8-page story. You can see these characters that are here. Scott has done something that a lot of people don't do. Usually he would just maybe sketch in this area right here where he has like the text and stuff, but he, being a graphic designer, had no problem popping some text in there. But since it's on the pencil layer, I had to redo the text on that anyway. So I basically put my own lettering over that. So what I'm going to do now is show you the steps that I've already done. And I've inked about half of this page up to this point. And so there's the inks that I've done so far. You can see the difference immediately. See how much darker it is. There's also some additional layer that I've done, which I call zip-a-tone. That's the old version of it. It's like putting a tone over stuff. And what it does is it just adds a little bit of texture to it, particularly if it's a piece that is in black and white. If it's in black and white, it's cooler if you can add a little extra textural stuff to it. And so that's what this is right here. You can see that I just added that in. And so now, looking at this piece, you can see that you have the original pencils are still on here. And you also have my inking, and you also have this kind of zip-a-tone with the dots and stuff, which is, strangely enough, has become popular again after all of this time, which I think is kind of funny. So the next step, just to show you what this looks like without the pencils and what it will look like when it's done, I'm going to remove the pencils, and there it is right there. So now you can see what it looks like when it's at its final stage without the pencils, and you can see that it's all cleaned up. Be very easy for it to print, and hopefully it looks good. So now what I'm going to do is go down to the next panel and bring the pencils back up again, and I'm going to do some inking here live. So what I do usually is just bring it up a little closer so it makes it easier for me to do this. And I'll get started inking. If anyone has any questions or any comments that you want to do, please leave those. Feel free to do it. And if I can think of anything, then I will, make some comments on that. You notice that I have all of these layers here locked. That's so that I don't do something on the wrong layer. It's very easy to do things on the wrong layer. All right. So I'm going to go to this. I'm using a thing called G Pen 2 to do the inking on this, and I want to get started. One of the things that was interesting on this is because most of the time that I've done inking, I've done inking for other people before, but it's so much easier to ink your own stuff than it is to ink someone else's stuff, because you're not always certain what it is that the person who did the pencils, what they intended with this stuff. And so you have to basically make the determination on everything as to what the penciler intended with the original work. I had the privilege of speaking to a legendary inker, which is Mark McKenna. Shout out to Mark McKenna, who has done work for Marvel and DC and a bunch of other places, in his own work as well. And I asked him, how do you determine, what you do on this, what you do on inking? And basically his response to that was that if it's someone who has an established style and has been around a long time and they do some work that is highly recognizable, then his suggestion was to do the inking exactly the way that along with the artist's style. So you're going to stick very close to the artist style. But he said if he felt like maybe he had more experience than the person who was doing the pencils, or maybe he had some sort of insight or something, that he also felt pretty comfortable doing his own take on stuff. So I guess if you take Mark McKenna's advice, it might mean that sometimes you don't follow exactly what's happening with the penciler, and sometimes you do. Well, that thought, and talking to Scott and Robert and Shawn after the fact, has left me with the idea that, maybe following exactly what Scott is doing on here is not always the correct answer, and that maybe if I have a different take on it, that maybe I should just go ahead and do it. So what I've been doing is maybe not following so close on everything, and maybe interpreting this in the way that with my own set of eyes or whatever. That's also freed me up to not worry so doggone much about all of this and just kind of enjoy myself a little bit more. So sometimes I will follow along exactly with what Scott's given me, and sometimes I will make some adjustments. Again, if you have any questions or comments, I'll be glad to answer that for you. So if you're watching this live, then you can do that, or even if you're watching it after the fact, I'll be glad to answer questions in any of the comment areas below. One of the big benefits of doing stuff digitally is you can do what I did just there. Just make it go away. If you don't like the way it came out, you just change it. Now you could always erase stuff. Well, you can't erase stuff digitally if it's ink. You could go over it with whiteout or something. And a lot of people do that. But nothing beats doing this digitally, because you see I just did that line 3 times if you're paying attention. If you're watching this and you have any questions, you're welcome to ask, or comments, whatever you got. You're looking at stuff that's very large on this screen right now, but when it's printed, it's going to actually be very small panel. Like if it was printed comic book size or whatever, this would be very small. Typically, comic book pages are done about 2 times over what it's printed at. Now, some people work at 1-to-1 size, and some people work much larger. Just depending on what it is that you want to do. You got to realize, though, that if you work way too large, a lot of that detail is going to die unless you're printing it large too. You kind of, at a certain point, you start working against yourself. One of the benefits of doing digital, I mean, I guess you could do this on an artboard too, but you don't have to do it at the size that they give you here. You can also move it. And that's what I do because it's much easier to stroke in certain directions if you're an artist. So for me, it's about that angle there, maybe a little bit less. You'll see, like it's kind of about a 45-degree angle for me. Now I could do it like this, but it just wouldn't be as crisp. So I put it back at that 45-degree angle to do that next piece. And you can see how it looks. What's interesting about doing someone else's pencils is that you are suddenly dealing in their visual language. I've established my own visual language. It's still not done. I mean, I've still got a lot of work to do. But the way that Scott would solve an issue might be very different than the way I would solve an issue. And so, in some ways, that's very challenging. In other ways, it's a great way to learn something. I like this guy's bushy eyebrows here. It's pretty awesome. That's a good example. I would probably not draw bushy eyebrows like that. But they're pretty fun. At any time, you can turn off the pencil layer to see where you're at. Because a lot of times when you're doing this, you get wrapped up in it, and it's difficult to tell what's going on. So every so often you have to knock that pencil layer off just to see what's happening. In this case, I think I'm okay. But sometimes it's very easy to miss an area. Because like that nose, for example, my program is stiffening up. You see what it's doing? It's going to do an automatic save. Every time it automatically saves, I save it on my own. It's a good idea on any program. Now it's going to go completely out. I am stressing the limits of my computer right now. It's always a good idea to save this stuff. Now I have it set up to automatically save because it's very easy to get involved in doing something like this, even if you're not talking to people live. It's very easy to forget where you are and what you're doing and do work for a long period of time and then not save it, and then like you have a storm or a power surge or something ridiculous and then you lose all of your work. That is quite a tragedy. It's happened before to me. Another great. Scott does have this kind of swoopy mustache action and stuff down. It's pretty fun. Still have to ink his hair up here. You notice I went out of bounds on that. I'll clean that up in a moment. Scott did a great job of putting these borders in here too. Usually the borders are inked in by the guy who does the inking. But Scott put in the borders, so I don't have to worry about that. It's pretty nice. If he hadn't done that, I would have done that before I started inking, because it solves a lot of problems for you to have those done. Alright, like I said, I'm going to do that to clean that up, look at my border, make sure I'm pretty good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock off this entire pencil layer and take a look at it without Alright, so that's basically the end of that layer. Oh, that's good. Oh, nope. Might want to add a few more elements like that. Make it look a little bit more like hair. Oh, I think that something was happening inside his mouth. Let's look. Yep. It's all supposed to be dark in there. So I almost missed that. Kill the pencils again, take a look at it, see where we're at, and then I think what I will do, although that's a pretty strong panel, I think. Might shore up a little bit there. All right, now I'm going to go to this layer, unlock it. Notice I locked the other layer, and I'm going to go to the airbrush. Now I have this area set up to do Zepatone. So, what I call Zepatone, you can see that I'm kind of just putting in a little background here. Honestly, I think that this kind of speaks for itself here. And notice I'm also going way outside of bounds there. Up in here, I'll fix that in a moment. And I'll put a little bit of that down here too. And like I did before, switch to my eraser, clean it up so I don't look like a big slob. You could do this all after the fact, but because it's all different layers and stuff, it's better for me to just take care of it now, to be honest. Because when I'm done with this thing, I'm not going to want to go back and do a bunch of cleanup. Takes all the fun out of everything. All right, so you just saw me ink one of the pages, one of the panels, no, not the page, but one of the panels. So there's one more panel done. Back off, see how it looks overall. One of the things you don't want is for there to be too much sameness. Now, mind you, I'm not doing the layouts or the pencils, so it's not ultimately my responsibility to take care of all of that. But I want there to be almost, unless there's a storyteller reason, I want there to be kind of an equal amount of, light and darkness. I want there to be a balance there. Like I said, if it's intentional for you to draw attention to something, then you might want to change that balance. But overall, I think that looks pretty good. Keep in mind the word balloons are not in there yet. Also, something else that I didn't add is the graphics. There's the graphics, and then there's going to be this is a paper. Let's see, yeah. So there's a little photo on the paper, and then I'm going to put some text in here, but I'm using Clip Studio Paint Pro, and it's not so great for putting text into stuff. It is good for putting word balloons in, but like literally laying out text on a newspaper is going to not be so great. Take 10 times longer on Clip Studio Paint Pro than it would on Photoshop. So when I'm done with this, I will import this into Photoshop and put the text in on this newspaper right here. I'm not sure if I'll do anything on this, but then there's also another panel down here where he slams this paper down, and I'll have a little text on this area too. All right, we're moving on to the next panel. I got 2 panels left. That's pretty cool. I started this yesterday, I'm not doing this full time. I'm just doing it kind of when it's fun. Right now, it's fun. So I'm going to start doing this panel next. So I'm going to lock that panel and go back to my inking panel. Again, if you're watching this, you're welcome to leave a comment. If I'm live, I'll answer it here, or if it's not live, I'm glad to answer your questions after the fact. Wherever this is. I'm still on eraser. I do that all the time. Back to G Pen. It's black. We're good to go. You know, what's funny to me is how much you take for granted what happens with ears. I've been doing artwork for a long, long time, and ears are still a little difficult for me. I probably just need to spend an afternoon drawing ears. Ears are much more complex than you probably think. There's just so much going on there. In this case, Scott has kind of suggested some stuff, and there's nothing wrong with what he's got on here. But there's not a lot of detail here. So I'll put a little extra into it. I'm going to add a little bit on his hair here. He's gone full pompadour on this guy's hair. And I really think that the cheek should be here instead of here. So I'm going to change a couple things in here. This is what they asked me to do, so that's what I'm doing. I started this at a strange time, probably before a lot of people got home from work. So if you're just now joining me, welcome. You can ask a comment if you want. I'm checking every so often to see if someone has left me a question or a comment. Said earlier, I think he's got his cheek down here. I think I'm going to go kind of more in this area. It's locking up again. Saving. I've got a comment here. Hello to Brian. He says, "Good day, Mr. Hooper. You're a wonderful artist, but an even more complete gentleman." Complete? All right. Whatever you say, man. These little X's that he has, like right here, that just means fill this area in with black. A lot of people don't realize that, but that's just a way of indicating to me that that's supposed to be a black area. A tie there. This is a story that's set in the 20s, so everyone's got a tie. I think he cut off the tie right about there, but I'm going to make it longer because otherwise it'd be too short. And I'm going to lengthen his frame a little bit because I just think that it'll play better. Also going to, he's got these indicators of light here, and I'm going to expand those out a little bit more. Hopefully make them flow a little more. He's got two black areas here against each other. I'm not sure exactly what's happening there. I'm going to try something here. This may not work. It's not going to work. Nope. Let's refer to all other layers. Here it is. Try one more time. Kill the pencils. Here we go. Hey, that worked. Saved me about 19 minutes of inking. Sure exactly what he intended here, because he's kind of got one black area up against another black area. So I'm just going to fill this in and do some of that. Again, he's got some black areas in here. You can see those black dots, or those black X's. So I'm going to fill in that black, and then he's got these little tick marks here. So again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to post it either while I'm live here, or you can ask questions after the fact, and I'll come back and answer them. This guy right here, I like this dude. He's got a lot of expression. Those of you who don't know the artistic process, just like everything else, the more you do this, the better you get. penciling a comic is not easy. It's a lot of work. And if you don't do this for a living, you kind of have to get into a groove before you're really comfortable and before you kind of find your style and you begin to, learn those kind of cool shortcuts and stuff that comes with doing it over and over and over again. And you go like, oh, hey, this worked really good last time and this looks cool and I like this effect and so on. If you look at this page versus some of the later pages that Scott's doing, this page is only a fraction as good as some of his later pages. And I suspect that if he continues to do this stuff, that it will also continue to get better and better and better. The thing is, I know that it's frustrating when you get started on all of this. It's so frustrating because everything is a struggle. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. Yeah, that applies to inking too. The more of his stuff that I ink, the more confidence that I get and the easier it is for me to do this. I can make decisions a little bit quicker. Here we go again with trying to find the right angle for this. So I move it a little bit. To get that angle. So often I drop those pencils off so I can see how I'm doing. Oh, I'm thirsty. That water tastes good. So what that brought up to me here is looking at this. I need something in here, so I'm going to do a little bit of this to give it a little texture. And then maybe a little bit there, and a little bit here. And I think I'm going to darken that in. So that's the sort of things you discover when you take that off of there. Give this a moment to save. It occurs to me that when you're looking at this, you're probably looking at the top of my head, which is, I'm sure, exciting. I watch some people that do stuff online, and what I just did, one swoop there. A lot of people take that in 3 or 4, or they kind of feather it out. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I guess I come from the school that says that you should, if you can, try to get it in one stroke. I just think it looks cleaner. But sometimes that's just not possible, to be fair. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing it feathered, like I said, or, taking another approach at this thing. it's all fair, just as long as it's whatever it is that you're doing is consistent, you know. I believe they call these handlebar mustaches. Not a lot of people have these anymore. It looks like a nightmare to maintain. Is that supposed to go all the way down there? For the record, I was going to do this yesterday, but I was having so many problems that it just didn't happen. Today, it's a whole new ball game. I'm getting through this pretty easy, I think. Which again, just goes to show you how important doing this stuff and practicing is. Was asking Shawn what his advice was on, trying to kind of figure out how to ink this, what the visual language is and stuff, and he suggested going to look at Pete Knifton's work. Well, Scott was highly influenced by Pete Knifton. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me to look at that stuff. So I went and looked at Pete Knifton's work, and sure enough, the stuff that I saw was already inked. But, yeah, I can definitely see the influence there, what's going on. So it informed me a little bit about kind of what I think was maybe Scott's intention on some of this. And it also kind of backed up some of the things that I was doing I didn't feel so self-conscious about doing it. Looking at Pete's stuff, it's like, oh, well, when his stuff is inked, it looks kind of like this, kind of. So, I'm probably not too far off the mark. Mind you, anyone who inks stuff is gonna ink different people, different. So, the way that I would approach this might be very different from the way that, if Shawn was doing it, or if Scott was doing his own inking. Or if Mark McKenna was doing it. It'd actually be fun to see, like, take a page that I did and then see what someone of the level of Mark McKenna would do with the same page. That would be incredibly informative to me, but Mark's also a busy guy. He doesn't have time to be incredibly informative to me. All right, we're closing in on this second panel here. I'm pretty excited about that. I have to say, doing this for a live studio audience is not as nerve-wracking and terrible as I thought it would be. I am surprised I haven't heard more comments. But this is also probably one of the worst times I could do this. Because most people are just getting home from work and probably fixing something to eat or something else. They're not thinking, hey, I need to watch this dude ink something. For those who are not artists, you should know that art is fun. It's a meditative process. If you're truly in the zone as an artist, it's very easy to lose track of time or to get locked into a world far, far away. And it has to do with, some people say, using a certain side of your brain, which is, instead of the analytical side, you're using the creative side. But it definitely disassociates you from reality. And for me, it's very relaxing. It's the same thing as people who do adult coloring books, where you just kind of get lost in putting the color on the page and stuff. There is a meditative process to this, which is quite nice, I think. And one of the reasons why I do this when I want to relax a little bit, also, by and large, inking is a little bit more relaxing than doing the pencils, because you're not required as much to come up with stuff. When you're doing, when you're doing the pencils, there's a lot of thought that needs to go into that usually. Inking is a little bit more like doing that coloring book. All right, I'm going to knock off the pencils, take a look at it. I'll go back to my zipatone layer. Clean it up. And there's another panel. Gonna save it, take a drink of water, see if anyone's given me a comment. No comments. All right, folks. We are down to one last panel on this page. So I bring the pencils back in, go back to the ink layer. They've got some J. Jonah Jameson looking guy here in this panel. He's got that 20s style mustache there. So you do a little evaluation. What am I looking at? What am I going to have to do here? One of the things that I look at is, you have a foreground, which is going to be these two guys. They're basically on the same plane. And then you've got this guy who's going to be, let's call it middle ground, who's coming in the door. And then you've got this background. And so one of the things that I'm going to want to do as I approach this is ink these two figures with a little bit thicker line, this guy a little bit thinner line, and then the background with an even thinner line, the thinnest line for the background. And I just read a comic a few days ago where that was done by Brian Stelfreeze, and one of the things that he does with the backgrounds to distinguish this, because he does his own inks, is to actually make the backgrounds gray. So he takes the inks that he does, instead of black, he does them kind of a darkish gray. And what that does is automatically, I mean, black is obviously the thing that's going to be the strongest. And, he takes a little bit of the attention away from the background by inking it gray. You notice that I'm also doing kind of a pretty strong outline. I think Scott did a much better job indicating kind of where he wanted his hair to be on that one, and it made that whole process a lot easier for me. And like I said, the more pages that he does, and the more that I ink him, the better both of us will get, because I'll begin to see kind of what it is, hopefully, that he intended on this stuff, and he will get better at also representing what it is that he wanted out of a piece. But I think that you can see, if you look at the first few panels of just this one page, I think you can see that his ability to draw this, gestures improved just through the course of one page. I think that at the end of 8 pages, his stuff is going to just really be cool. And, maybe represent his style in a way that's never been around. It'll be something totally different than what he started with. And better. Oh, Scott Prime, who is doing the pencils for this. He's the one that I am inking over. He just chimed in. He says, "I just checked in on you over on YouTube. Me and a guy from work watched for a few minutes. Keep up the good work. Back to work for him, and back to work for me too." Scott works some pretty wacky hours lately. It's cool to know that he saw this and that he thought it was what I was doing is good. That's what I want to hear. Obviously it's Robert's comic. I want him to be happy. I want Shawn to be happy. It's his layouts. I want Matt to be happy. It's his story. And I want, the viewers, people who look at this stuff, I want them to be happy. But the person that I want to be the most happy is Scott, because it's his pencils. If I screw up his pencils, there's not much. I've failed. I've failed if he thinks that I didn't do a good job. If anyone has any comments, feel free to put them on there, or questions. Happy to answer any questions you have, whether it's technical or you want to know what the heck I'm doing or why I'm doing it. If I can answer it, I will. You might ask a question I don't know the answer to. It's weird to be doing artwork live. I say that because I keep checking to see if there's a comment or something. And I realize I may also have some weird looks on my face while I'm drawing. Because drawing is, like I said, it's meditative. So it's very easy to lose track of kind of, whatever, the way your silly face looks. I'll try my little paint bucket trick here again. Kill the pencils. Heyo. See how that worked? So Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint each have a method of filling in, coloring, filling in an area just by kind of estimating where that area should end, even if it's not completely closed off. Clip Studio is pretty good about it. Photoshop's not bad, but because I had closed off that area, I figured that it could paint in for me, and it did that. Now, there's a lot of black here, but again, this is a guy in the foreground, and I'm going to want to do the exact same thing over here on this guy. Put a lot of black in there so that it separates him from the people that are behind him. I'm going to try not to put as much black on this dude, the dude in the middle here. I might also add this guy, and this guy is particularly good. I'm not exactly sure what Scott did here, but just the form and the the anatomy and stuff on these two guys, the two guys in the front, is really good. I mean, they look three-dimensional, and I think that that's, like I said, an improvement over even just earlier in this page. I think that his stuff is just getting better by the panel. this mustache going out here. That's funny. And again, I am really enjoying drawing this dude's mustache. And I'm getting better at rendering this stuff. I think. Doesn't really matter what I think. What do you think? I started watching David Finch he does a thing called Monday Night Draw where he draws. He draws a piece from the very beginning, like he will sketch the thing out and then render it in pencil, and then he uses kind of a, what would be a liner type marker. And then a brush style marker, and then finally, he will render it with a bunch of other, marks and stuff. And it's been amazingly interesting and informative. Do you see what Scott's doing here? How he indicated this in a way that's very different from the way that he was doing it initially. Looking up again, it's saving it. This organic shape is a lot better than when he started this. I mean, I can see a leap in his abilities in this panel alone, which is pretty cool. I'm going to drop these pencils off for just a second. See where I'm at. I kind of like this panel. I like how it's coming out. It's kind of fun. How's everyone doing out there? If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Even if you don't see this live. This is a case where I'm not really sure where this guy's looking. So I'm just gonna pick one of the guys for him to look at. want to get a little closer here. I can't tell what's going on necessarily. Is that guy's gums? Or is it just, it's dark up there? I'm going to say it's dark. This guy has some serious gooseneck issues going on here. He needs to look into that. Maybe some microdermabrasion or some retinol A. Maybe even some retinol B. Know what I'm saying? Some of this, to me, I'm inking, I think, like I would ink like Mike Mignola or something. I'm not sure if that was what Scott intended, but that's what we're kind of hinting up here with. Mind you, I'm a big Mike Mignola fan. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily, like I said, what Scott was intending. But it looks cool. Scott has indicated a tie here. And so, I mean, that's a line. I don't know if that's the line of his coat or what, but men's shirts run to the other side of the button. Women's shirts run to this side. So I'm just going to do it like I think it should be done. Whether that was correct or not. Oh, now we're saving again. He's got this tie indicated here. It's way too small. But I'm going to kind of freehand it in there. Something's going on here, and I'm not sure what it is. I I'm just going to let it be. All right, we still have this background to do. And one of the great things about doing this versus doing it analog is that it's very easy to do inks for straight lines. And let me show you how. You click on where it terminates and then hold shift and you see what it does. It makes a very cool straight line for you. By the way, I'm using that's my pen that I use. I'm using a Huion tablet, if you care. The industry, the big dog in the industry is Wacom or Wacom. But Wacom tablets are expensive, and I could get a lot more tablet for a lot less price by going with Huion. And guess what? I like this Huion, which was about a third of the price as my Wacom that I had. And I gotta say that I've had a lot less trouble with this Huion than I had with Wacom. Now, I'm sure they don't appreciate me saying that, but you might as well know. So at least for this tablet, and by the way, I mean, this is what I'm drawing on, if you want to know. Here it is. You see it's got some buttons here on the right. Or I'm sorry, on the left. And then, there's the tablet. And so I just use this little stylus, this right here. And I draw on that. And I look at my monitor. Now, the fancier versions, you draw directly on the monitor. And someday I'll have one of those. Maybe. I've done it like this for so long. I'm not even sure how I would feel about that. Now he has indicated here that there's going to be some blackness and some shadows, but I'm going to back off of that because I really want the blackness and the shadows to be up front here. So I don't want it to compete with the people in the back. So we're getting close here. Again, I'm going to, on these exclamation marks, I don't know, these expression lines, I'm going to still have my have to change my what I'm doing here. So in each of these, I'm going to make sure they're at about a 45-degree angle when I strike them. And that's just because it's easier for me to do it that way. David Finch talked about that the other day, is that like certain angles are just easier for you to draw straight lines. And for me, it's like at that 45-degree angle, something pretty close to that. There we go. All right, let's get that back to 0. Take another look at it. Let's drop the pencils off, see what we got here. Getting close. If anyone has any questions for me, now's the time to ask. Because I'm probably not going to start a new page. My thought while I'm inking this here is, I mean, this is outside, so, I mean, it's not outside, but it's outside of this room, so I'm going to assume that the main room is brighter, and it also frames this dude, so I'm not putting anything in here, I'm just leaving it white. And it also, you know, kind of draws attention to him in some ways. And these two foreground figures are defined by much more darkness. Oftentimes we'll put this, you know, this darkness here around the deal. It's kind of like a vignette, but it's also designed to hopefully draw your attention to the middle of the frame. And keep in mind, we don't have the word balloons up here. When you put the balloon up here, it's probably going to cover a lot of this up. It's maybe one person talking, or it may be multiple people. I don't know. All right. I think we have arrived at the special moment where we pull back here and look at the whole thing. And mind you, it's still, again, it's not finished. It's close, but what I have to do still is import this into Photoshop so I can put some text in here. And I don't know what text I'm going to put in there. I need to put some text in right here. And even when I'm done with all of this, it still has to be scripted, and it has to be, you have to put the word balloons in there. So there still has a lot to do on this page, but that, for the most part, is the second page of the Bad Candy Grave crossover, and you saw about half of it being inked. So there you go. Again, if you're watching this after the fact, if anyone has any questions, please leave them for me in the comments below, and I'll be glad to answer the questions. And if you enjoyed this, tell me so. Give me a like, give this a share, and I'll do this again. All right. Hope everyone has a great evening, and I'll talk to y'all later.